As you and I are looking to navigate our organizations through this difficult coronavirus economy, I thought it would make sense to reach out to somebody who had led his organization through a terrible, terrible situation. And so on today's show, we are interviewing the former president and CEO of SeaWorld, Jeff Manby. Jeff Manby is the man who had to lead his company from the brink of extinction into a new sustainable business model. Remember Shamu? Well, imagine what it would be like to find out that your company can no longer offer its core product or service because a documentary has gained mass fame. Think about that. There was a documentary that came out that falsely tried to prove that SeaWorld was systemically abusing their killer whales. And next thing you know, SeaWorld's most popular act and their mascot, Shamu, was being discussed as being no longer socially acceptable.
Orange County Sheriff's Office.
We need SO to respond for a dead person at SeaWorld. A whale has eaten one of the trainers.
On today's show, the former CEO and former president of SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment joins us to walk you through how to navigate this crisis. We now find ourselves in a world where your business may have been just ruled to be non-essential. In this world where pastors are not allowed to bring together their congregation as they preach. In this world where marijuana dispensaries are still open. In this world where liquor stores are still open, but you cannot get your hair cut because it is deemed to be non-essential. You need to know how to navigate a crisis effectively. And that's what we're going to do on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, now we hit.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top. Teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go!
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom and we'll show you
Yes,
how to get
yes, yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, I know many of you are thinking, Paul Hood, you're a CPA. I'm sure you're aware of this. Everybody right now is thinking about, let me just throw it out there. Paul, I'm going to try to read the minds of our listeners. I'm going to read the minds of our listeners. You're thinking about the quarantine. And because most of you are self-employed, Paul, I feel like some people are thinking about how to get funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. And you're wondering when I'm going to stop with the monk music. Paul, would you agree with my mind reading?
Well, that was amazing mind reading. I am very impressed. I think you have another career. That's another $1 million business, Clay, that you just got to get fired up.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation, and I think, on one hand, they're really portraying they came out real strong. Everybody's going to get this money.
Oh, yeah.
Here it is, and you're going to get this on the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan.
Yeah.
And then you've got this other, the EIDL, that's direct with the SBA, and boom, we're going to get a year's worth of income. And to my knowledge, Clay, and we have clients in about 33 states.
Well, that's only 33 states.
Yeah. Nobody's gotten a penny.
Now, real quick, before you go out there throwing out these things, I have a little audio clip, and then I'm going to introduce our super guest, okay?
Oh, here we go.
So let me just cue this up real quick. This is the audio. This is from the Small Business Administration. This is not me. This is from the SBA, the press conference they did at the White House. Let me cue it up here real quick.
Banks, and we spent the last 24 hours making this system even easier. So this will be up and running tomorrow. I encourage all small businesses
This was recorded Thursday night.
that have 500 or fewer people, please contact your lenders. Any FDIC institution will be able to do this. Any credit union, existing SBA lenders, and fintech lenders. You get the money. You'll get it the same day. You use this to pay your workers. Please bring your workers back to work.
Okay, so we know the SBA has announced you'll get your money the same day. That was announced Thursday night. To your knowledge, as of Friday, as of Monday, no one has received the funding yet.
Not a penny.
Out of the 200 some odd clients I have, no one's received it yet. So I would say we're in crisis mode.
Sure.
So I thought let's book somebody who knows how to navigate through a crisis and come out on top. And so on today's show, we've got the former president and chief executive officer of SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, Joel Manby. Welcome onto the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. It's great to be here.
Well, sir, where are you quarantined?
I am right now quarantined in Atlanta, Georgia. Part of what I'm doing right now is helping a very large nonprofit get through the crisis, and they're headquartered here, so that's what I'm doing.
Atlanta. Okay. So I'm going to start with you here. Joel, when you were running SeaWorld, it's a huge organization. You know, when you were running SeaWorld, you were the CEO and the president. You ran that for 12 years, if I'm correct, from 2003 to 2015. Am I correct there?
That was Herschend Enterprises, which is a very small privately held theme park. At SeaWorld, I was there from 15 through 18, and most of the heavy crisis that they were going through with Blackfish.
Okay, so walk us through the crisis you were dealing with over there with SeaWorld, just so listeners have some context about your experience here.
Yeah, basically, in 2013, a documentary came out called Blackfish that was very negative to SeaWorld. It was a shockumentary. It basically implied that the way we treated killer whales would make the killer whales insane, and that was the reason that it killed one of our trainers. And we did have a death that was horrific. The movie really changed people's trustworthiness of SeaWorld, and there was also legislation coming against us in California to outlaw killer whale breeding. So our entire business model was at risk. And sure enough, once the documentary was run about 500 times on CNN, our trustworthiness went from 65% with the American public to only 35%. And our EBITDA, or our cash flow, dropped in half in a year and a half. And for your listeners, the theme park business is a very heavily fixed cost business with all the rides, attractions, and safety and real estate. And so trying to adapt to a 50% drop in cash flow in a fixed cost business with 21,000 employees and $1 billion in revenue for a publicly held company, it was just a really, really tough leadership experience. And in some ways reflects what's going on with the coronavirus, because a lot of your listeners are shut down. And so, there's some similarities there.
Can you share with me and share with the listeners, what was the low point? I mean, what was the moment where maybe you in your office where you're sitting there going, well, they just aired that documentary again, and I got another complaint email again, and I can't find the passwords to make my printer work. I mean, what was the low point? What was the worst part of that crisis?
I know the exact moment. I had only been there 4 months and had left a really good job as CEO of Herschend Enterprises for 13 years, recruited away to run SeaWorld. I knew it was in crisis, but literally that 4 months in, if we had time, the list of things that had already happened, it would exhaust your listeners. But at a high level, we were already getting investigated by the DOJ and the SEC, meaning criminal charge or certainly fines against former executives that were there before I came in.
Wow. About
our earnings statement. So we had that going on nonstop. We had protests at our parks every weekend from PETA. Our attendance was going down. We were accused of somebody spying in other organizations, so we had legal issues over that. So the list went on, but then I'm sitting there one night, 9:00 at night in my office, and we were trying to get a new expansion of our killer whale pools in California approved by the California Coastal Commission. A call came in from our legal head and PR person saying that our proposal did not pass. We could only build this expansion if we ended whale breeding, which made absolutely no sense. You know, we're going to put $100 million into a park without the ability to have future whales in that enlarged pool. So we're trying to solve the problem, but basically we're shut down. And I knew at that moment SeaWorld's future had changed forever. We couldn't build anything out there unless we agreed not to breed animals. And that's SeaWorld's whole business model, at least. And so we, from there, a whole nother story I'm happy to go into, but we had to pivot and a lot of your leaders may need to do this, or your listeners, we had to pivot a great deal. The unbelievable paradox here is that Shamu was our biggest marketing hook and our biggest draw up until the legislation in Blackfish. And then due to research, it was our biggest liability. It was why people weren't coming. So not only did we have to do all the things you have to do when cash flow has been cut in half and, preserve cash, keep critical things going. At the same time, we had to redesign our future of what was SeaWorld going to be eventually without killer whales at their parks. And that's a whole different conversation. So a lot of your listeners, it's bad enough to have to, just completely shut down, save cash, get new loans, try to survive. But at the same time, as a leader, we can't stop thinking about the future. And some of your listeners, you're going to have to pivot your business. And the old way is just not going to work anymore. And that was true for SeaWorld. And I think it's true for probably a lot of your listeners as well.
Paul Hood, you had a hot take.
Yeah, Joel, I really, as you're sitting there talking about that, I never really put that together with what we're going through today. But, one of the things that we struggle as business owners, and myself as a consultant to businesses, is it sounds like you kind of had to deal with what we're dealing with now, because really an emotional ploy or an emotional situation was put before by the California government, was put before economics. They didn't consider all the jobs that they were going to destroy. They didn't consider the impact to the local community and all the individuals. All they cared about is the emotion is, oh my gosh, they're mistreating this animal.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're just talking about facts.
I am. I'm sorry.
Stop that.
Nah.
Okay, I want to talk more about.
Exactly right.
So let's.
And here we're in a situation though where it's no fault of your listeners the situation their businesses are in, and yet we still feel shame, we still feel guilt, we still feel horrible laying off our employees. I think this is one of the pivotal times in our history here of how we lead through this, because it's difficult. It is difficult to lead right now for anybody, and we're all exhausted. And I just am here to say, have hope, get up and do it and go at it every day, and pivot as fast as you can to the new realities.
How did you end up? Take us to the end, and we might go back to the messy middle, but take us to the end. Where did SeaWorld, as you navigated them through this, where did you kind of end up? Where did SeaWorld end up? What was the final plan?
Absolutely. So the plan strategically was to, although we knew killer whales were going to have to go away over time, we had a 10-year plan to completely pivot some other attractions. So we would have festivals, which are more software kind of things where people go in and there's a festival overlay for the park. We had rides and attractions that were still tied to animal causes, but for instance, Guy Harvey, who is a great oceanographer and painter, he sponsored one of our rides, and all the proceeds from his paintings would go to stop shark finning, as an example. So we had a complete strategy, including hotels and resorts, to still be about oceans, still be about ocean animals, and do a lot of digital work and virtual reality. But we didn't necessarily have to have killer whales.
And again, I mean, man, if you do not agree with me, that you and I have known each other here for about a total of 17 minutes. So that's okay. But I thought we would do is I wanted to give the listeners some facts here real quick, and I just want to parallel the coronavirus with this real quick. Okay? Have you been following this a lot, Joel? Have you been following this story?
Absolutely, every day.
Okay, so I have sound clips that I'm going to cue up here. I just want to make sure the listeners can follow the story here. Okay? So Paul, what happened is we had a report that came out from a man by the name of Neil Ferguson. Neil Ferguson. And for anybody out there who does not know who Neil Ferguson is, he is the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Analytics at the Imperial College in London. And if everybody will Google search him, you can go to Wikipedia, you can find this. And he came out with a report that said, hey, we expect 500,000 British people to lose their lives from this, potentially, and 2.2 million Americans to lose their lives potentially. And I'm going to play the audio. This is Dr. Deborah Birx, who's working with President Trump on the coronavirus task force. Here, let me hit play here so you can hear the audio of her kind of explaining this.
Facts for the American people. I'm sure many of you saw the recent report out of the UK about them adjusting completely their needs. This is really quite important. If you remember, that was the report that said there would be 500,000 deaths in the UK and 2.2 million deaths in the United States. They've adjusted that number in the UK to 20,000. So 500,000 to 20,000. We're looking into this in great detail to understand.
So that number mathematically, the initial prediction was about 25 times higher than what they're saying right now. It could be. Some say it's because of mitigation. Some say it's because of a statistical oversight, whatever. But the point is, you can't cut hair anymore right now.
Right.
But you can go to marijuana dispensaries.
You can.
And even if you disagree right now and you say, now I happen to have a very good friend who, Paul, you and I know, who owns marijuana dispensaries. And I have a couple of them actually. And one of my buddies said that his sales are up 8 times higher than they've ever been since the shutdown. And Newsweek came out and said liquor sales are up 55% since the government, Newsweek, since the government shutdown. So whether we agree with it at all, let's just say we don't agree. Let's say you do agree, you don't agree. Either way, we are left to navigate this and to try to feed our families. So, Joel, I want to walk the listeners through the steps, and you can just tell me your take on this. And I know you have a great new book that you released about this, a great new book that I'm sure has a lot of these concepts in there. But let's talk about it first off. You have this new book called Love Works, 7 Timeless Principles for Effective Leaders. So step 1, dealing with the reality of the situation. You know, just the reality, just dealing with not the emotional, what could be, but dealing with the reality. What kind of tips does your book provide, or does it speak about how you're supposed to lead, you know, with love when you're going through things that aren't positive? Does your book speak about that at all?
Absolutely. And it's available on Amazon, or it's Audible as well. But let me just, I want to comment on that stat change, and then I'll go through a couple of examples of where love the verb does work in a crisis situation. I think the decision that President Trump and the administration, there's only one decision really in all of this, but it's a really critical decision, and that's when to let people go back to work. And unfortunately, politicians, especially the governors, they're in all they care about is covering their rear ends, so they're going to close things longer so the death rate's low. But the catastrophe of this will be what happens, obviously, that you guys have talked about, if we don't reopen the economy, and the fallout from that between mental illness, suicide, depression, substance abuse will be way higher than a 1% to 3% death rate on people who get this virus. The problem is that's not politically correct to talk about. And but as long as we flatten the curve, which is we appear to be doing with all the data outside of New York and California and Louisiana, I think, you know, we have some bright spots on the horizon here. But and you know, at least the government is pumping in $2 trillion, hopefully, into the economy, which is about 2 months worth of our GDP, right? So in a way, they're trying to keep it going, but they got to get the money out to these folks so they can survive. So that's just my comment to your.
Can I comment on your comment?
Question.
Can I comment on your comment real fast? This is the audio of President Trump explaining. Again, I want to make sure the listeners get this. If you're out there listening today and you're not aware of these names, please write these names down. Please look these names up. Neil Ferguson initially predicted 2.2 Americans would lose their lives. Look up Neil Ferguson, look into his background, decide whether you believe that was a wise idea or not. Then Dr. Deborah Birx, she came to Mr. Trump, President Trump, and she said the following. I'm going to cue up the audio so you can hear President Trump explaining what Dr. Deborah Birx said to him. And by the way, Dr. Deborah Birx is standing next to him during this press conference, so you can hear it. Here we go. I'm going to cue it up real fast.
So together we're going to win this war, and the sooner we do, the sooner we can begin to rebuild, and we're ready to rebound and return to normal lives. We went from the best economy in the history of the world, the best economy that this country has ever seen, the best employment numbers we've ever had, 160 million people working, almost 160 million, to a point where the professionals came to me and they say, sir, you're going to have to shut the country down. said, what does that mean? They said, sir, you're going to have to shut it down. And we're going to build it up, and I think we're going to build it up fast. I think we're going to have a tremendous rebound. There's a great energy and a great pent-up demand.
So, Paul, we know that the experts, the officials, Dr. Deborah Birx came and said, you got to shut it down. You got to shut it down. That's what she said. We got to shut it down. And we know that's what happened. And we know that Cuomo, Governor Cuomo from New York, he said we got to shut it down. This is Governor Cuomo commenting on his decision to shut it down. Let me keep the audio here.
I think the smartest way forward is a modified public health strategy that dovetails and complements a get back to work strategy, right? What we did was we closed everything down. That was our public health strategy. Just close everything. All businesses, all workers, young people, old people, short people, tall people, every school, close everything. If you rethought that or had time to analyze that public health strategy, I don't know that you would say quarantine everyone. I don't even know that that was the best public health policy. Young people then quarantined with older people was probably not the best public health strategy because the younger people could have been exposing the older people to an infection.
Okay, so, Paul, I'm going to follow the timeline here. Point one, Neil Ferguson reports that 2.2 million Americans could lose their lives. 500,000 British people could lose their lives. That's point A. Point B, Dr. Deborah Birx says we got to shut it down. We got to shut it down. Point three, Trump tells governors, hey, this is what we know. Governor Cuomo decides to shut it down. Can you comment on what you're hearing here from Governor Cuomo and from Dr. Deborah Birx? How do you process that? Because you're a CPA right now, and you see people you're kind of like the doctor for people's finances.
Yep.
How is this impacting people? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are is most of my clients don't understand. How come their business is shut down, but I can go to Bass Pro Shop and hang out with 300 people? How come their business is shut down and you can go to the liquor store and, get you some marijuana? So that's the deal is the mixed message is it's kind of like to further it is when our president said that the result or the cure can't be worse than the actual disease.
Yes, sir.
And when everything we hear is the older group of people are the ones that are really susceptible.
Yes.
Then let's protect them. Why it's kind of like, to me, is my grandma used to say, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And it's kind of like you get ants in your house and you burn the dang house down. You can get rid of the ants, but your house is gone. And so that's the concern that I'm hearing. And yeah, the government's going to step in, or supposedly they've said they're going to step in and help my clients, small businesses survive this cash flow wise. But one, it hadn't happened, and two, Clay, they just don't. That's just not free money. Somebody's got to pay for that.
On April 6th, as of today, April 6th, Forbes came out and said that 78% of Americans are check to check.
Right.
78% of Americans are check to check. And I would just tell you that 78% of Americans are check to check, and according to Forbes, that's the stat. But right now, you have an accounting practice with thousands of clients.
Yes, I do.
I work with hundreds of small business owners and medium-sized and large business owners, and not a single one has been funded as of right now.
Nothing.
Despite the fact that the head of the SBA was reporting people will be funded same day. So in your mind, when they say they're going to fund somebody same day, Paul, as a CPA who's worked with the IRS and other incredible branches of our federal government,
sure.
When they say it's going to be immediate same-day funding, what does that mean in your mind?
Well, Clay, I'm actually, and you put me in contact with a couple of people that have the vice president's ear.
Yeah, in the office of the vice president. Yep.
Yeah, and they're asking me to write some comments to Congress and on. But the funny thing is the sad thing is you can't write comments on it. So this thing is going through, and for them to make decisions and make adjustments, people like me who are actually in the real world can't even communicate with them because their site isn't accepting those. So what the problem is right now is, first off, this PPP program.
Yep.
The average business, their wages, their payroll is about 25 to 30% of their total expenses.
True.
So what they're doing is they're saying, all right, we're going to take 2.5 months
of your payroll,
give that to you, and you have to spend it over the next 8 weeks. Well, the reality is that money's going to last about 3 weeks, Clay. because it's 2.5. It's 25 to 30%.
Are you saying that the government didn't think this through?
Yes. It's even worse,
No.
Clay. So it even gets worse when you get into this EIDL program, because I knew this was a problem when they said the banks were going to get cut out and you were going to go straight to the SBA. See, the average American says, hey, that's cutting out a layer. But the reality is you're taking the profit motive out. And so all you have is this government entity.
The glacier of funding.
That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Now, Joel, I got your hot take here for you. I'm going to read this to you. And by the way, Joel, if you get a chance to go to thrivetimeshow.com/coronavirus, I'm keeping stats here, Paul. I've got it all cited so you can see.
I actually already did. You'd be proud of me. I already saw what you did.
Good job, Joel.
Now, here's what we got here. This is what we know now. This is interesting. This is from the CDC. I'm going to read this to you, Paul. It says, in cases where a definite diagnosis of COVID-19 cannot be made, but is likely or suspected, it is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as probable or presumed. Now, I will tell you this. This is going to blow your mind here, Joel. This will blow your mind. We've had 3 Thrivers now reach out to me, 3, who've said, I work at a hospital, and somebody passed away today, and I was asked to put COVID on their death certificate, and they did not die from that. And I just wanted you to know, because I know you're crazy and you talk about it on your show. So I just wanted you to know. That's the third one.
Well, it pads their stats, and it justifies this side of things.
And your client, the Boom Mobile guy,
right?
He was not feeling very well. He owns a company called Boom Mobile, Jeff.
Yep.
And Jeff said that he wasn't feeling well, so he called up the local urgent care. And over the phone, they diagnosed him as having coronavirus.
There it is.
So he went in to have a test, and he doesn't have the coronavirus.
What?
But they still chalked it up as the coronavirus. And I'm saying all this to say, even though we don't agree, we're dealing with reality. And that is what my main man, Joel, you were being told that it's unethical to have a killer whale, that you guys were systemically abusing the killer whales. CNN is airing this, and it doesn't matter. 'Cause, by the way, for the record, I think that CNN's lost their mind and that you were right and that they were wrong. But
did they ever have their mind?
but it's reality, and you have to deal with it.
Right.
And you know, it's wasted energy for a leader in a crisis to say, I don't understand, this isn't fair. We just have to deal every day with the reality and move and lead. You know, I think some leaders that I've gone through in a crisis, they feel like they got to be a cheerleader or a motivator. People don't want to be cheerled right now. They want to be led. And,
right.
And but you know, I want to go back to the point you make, is this is what scares me about the government funding the Small Business Association. When they funnel it through the banks, 2 things are happening. I talked to some senior executives at banks over the weekend. 2 things are problematic. One, they're going to favor their clients in getting, you know, a limited amount of money out quickly. It's going to be probably the bigger clients that they favor, right? Or the ones that have more loans with the bank. And I think the small players get hurt in that, yet the small players are the ones that need the money the fastest right away. And the second thing is the banks right now are remembering what happened after 2007, 2008. They did what the Fed asked them to do, what the Secretary of Finance asked them to do, and they got penalized when the Obama administration came in retrofact, for some of the ways they were trying to help out.
Yep.
The banks now are a little afraid, like, if a business gives me false information, I feed them the money, are you going to hold me liable? The Fed has to say no, but we know how politicians are, and if a new administration comes in and they say all these business people were inappropriately helped, it's a great campaign message that Wall Street's winning again, when really it's the small business leader that you're trying to help that's getting screwed in this. And that, but again, I'm focusing on, you know, things that are not fair here. But if people can just hold on and conserve cash, if they are in existence, then, you know, leading with a lot of patience with your employees, understanding their fear, patience with yourself to get rest and sleep when, you know, exhausted leader isn't a good leader right now. And being extremely truthful right now, which is one of the words in Love Works in the book I wrote. So many times in this situation, in my early years, I wanted to provide certainty to my employees. Oh, you know, it's going to turn around, or you're going to have a job. And later, through mistakes, I learned that all I can do is day by day provide clarity. Here's where we are. Here's what we're doing. here's what I can expect, and I'll give you an update tomorrow. And communicate 3 to 4 times more than you normally do, whether you feel like it or not, because the employees are scared to death. And I just hope that a lot of your listeners are in that situation, that they still have employees and they still are functioning and they can keep it going. But I think the last thing I'd say is we have to forgive ourselves too, and realize this is not our doing, and don't be so hard on ourselves that we can't lead, even though we have fear, and we don't know what's going to happen either. But we can't show that too much to our employees, because we have to be strong for them. But does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense, and I want to hammer home what you just said. Just this morning, I have some friends who own banks or the head of banks, and they rolled out some updates for you. And just speaking to what you were saying, they mentioned that the loans will be issued by the banks, not the SBA, okay? But the SBA is going to be funding these things. They also mentioned that as long as you fill out the paperwork, this is the new rules and regulations, the bank will not be held liable for people, basically lying on their applications. And this was a big thing. A lot of banks were not.
When did that happen? Because I didn't actually hear that. Was that today?
Just this morning, yes, just this morning.
Okay.
And so,
well, I had missed that, so that's good.
Yeah. So again, but I know people that own banks and people that have invested heavily in banks, and they're going, we're not going to release anything until we know what's going to happen here.
Well, and Clay, the PPP is really for the employees. That's not really for the business owner.
True.
And they don't understand. They don't understand that that's really, and then you factor in the fact that they increased the unemployment to an extra $600. I don't know if you ran the numbers, Clay, or not.
Oh no, it's bad. It's bad.
Here's the deal. Yep. Before all this happened, there was one side of the aisle. Now I'm not going to get political. One side of the aisle that wanted a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Sure.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Well, with this extra money for unemployment,
oh yes,
small businesses are gonna, for at least for the short term, gonna.
Shh, Paul. Shh. Don't tell the truth.
Small businesses are going to have to pay their employees $15 or more to get them to come back to work. Otherwise, they'll make more on unemployment.
Correct.
To me, it's a little backdoor.
Don't go telling the truth, Paul.
Yeah, well, and I'm a CPA.
Backdoor politics? Is that what you're claiming?
That's exactly right.
Paul.
Backdoor politics. Well, Joel, I got a question for you. So you're a unique kind of guy because, and whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, he's a businessman first and not a politician. And so he's trying to weigh that deal. So if you were president, Joel, if you were president, knowing you're the business side of things, because it sounds like you've got there's this two sides of the argument. There's the people that want to shut down your park because they
real quick before you ask this question, listen, Joel came on the show to promote his new book, Love Works. Okay. 7 Timeless Principles for Effective Leaders. He has agreed to talk about something topical. And if you paint my main man into a corner and you make him answer a couldn't possibly answer.
I want it. No, I love this.
Okay,
I
Paul.
love this.
Okay, no, that's my whole point is
okay.
He's a businessman, but yet he wrote a book about feelings and how love can you can be a leader, with some of the principles he's got in there.
Okay.
So, it seems to be there's two extremes. There's back in your day, there was the people that wanted to shut you down because you were being mean to the killer whales, and then there was the economic side of it. We still face that today. So, Joel, if you were president, what's that balance to where, the effect on our country economically versus how, protecting this 0.1% of the population that could be devastated by this. So practicality.
It's a great question.
Yeah,
and it's the question, as I articulated earlier. You're right. That's the only question in the big picture that really matters right now. I'm gonna say 2 things on that, if you don't mind. The first on the book, and I appreciate your comments, but I'm fine answering the question. And actually, the book itself, people misunderstand love entirely, because I talk about agape, which is a verb. It's how you treat people. Doesn't matter how you feel about them. And it's not soft. It's actually very, very hard to lead that way. I've led an autocratic, entrepreneurial, where I made every decision, and I've led in a different way with the Love Works philosophy, and the returns are incredible. The lower turnover, higher productivity, higher engagement. So that the book is about the misunderstanding of the word and what love and respect and dignity and forgiveness really means with an employee. So I'll just say that about the book. But on the president, you don't want to have political discussions, and there's a lot of things about Trump that are extremely unlikable. However, I am so glad that we have a businessman in the White House right now, because a politician could not lead out of this situation. They don't know how to make difficult decisions. I've been with politicians. I've been to Washington more times than I want lobbying. He will make the ultimate call where we cross the line. Where do we cross the line between caring too much about 1 to 2% of the population that may die from, it's not of the population, it's of those who get the virus. So if 30% get the virus, we're only talking about 0.6. And I know I sound cruel in that, but we have to worry about the broader impact. I think he will make the best decision possible. I'm glad I'm not in his shoes. He is not going to please anybody. No matter what decision he makes, he's going to get ripped apart over it. But at least I really actually believe, as narcissistic as he is, he's going to make the best decision for the country. Because in the end of the day, that's the only way he's going to get reelected. If he worries about reelection, he's going to make the wrong call. And I hope that, he does, and I pray that he does. But I'm also really glad that I'm not in his shoes, because it's a tough call to make. As long as we can keep our hospitals from being overrun, where every news leak is at, I think he'll make the decision to open up sooner rather than later.
Joel, I'm going to throw in a hot take, and then we're going to talk about how to practically solve this, okay? Because we've got to accept the reality, then we got to teach people the practical steps here. So I have a hot take here. There's this controversial document, Joel. I'm sure you've seen it before, called the Constitution. Paul, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's it's very controversial.
Yeah, that's the document that they use an eraser on, right? And add some.
This would be the United States Constitution.
Oh, that one.
And what happened was our country was started when we declared our independence from King George because he was taxing us without our consent, et cetera, et cetera. The Declaration of Independence. Then we formed this thing called the U.S. Constitution. And these are kind of like, this is like our rules. This is how we do it. This is the ultimate law. This is our compass. In the Constitution, it reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, so you can't make an official religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble. And to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So as I read the Constitution, and we've had a lot of plagues or viruses and things that have killed a lot of people in the history of these great United States. A lot of people aren't familiar with history, but we've had a lot of things that could have killed a lot of people, a lot of things that did. And President Trump has recently started talking about 1915, 16, 17, and some of the viruses that were spreading. But the point is, if I'm an old guy, if I'm Father Time and my immune system is compromised and I choose to sit on a lawn chair and die of the coronavirus while sipping on Coronas, as I read the Constitution, I should be able to do that.
Sure.
And so we have for the short term, it's this little thing we've done. Benjamin Franklin warned about it, but he talks about anybody who would be willing to give up their essential liberty in exchange for safety deserves neither and will receive neither. He says, Benjamin Franklin said, one of the founding fathers, he says, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. So my take on it would be this, and if I was president, and certainly I'm not, but I would say, America, this is going to be the one conversation I need everybody to put your phone down and focus. Right now, we have a population of 329 million people. 329 million people. And according to the projections by our chief physicians and Neil Ferguson and different people, we're projecting between 100 and 200,000 great Americans are at risk. And if that is you, we encourage you to stay home, and we're going to do a $100 billion stimulus package to bring you food and medical supplies and to take care of you. And if you want to stay home, we encourage you to do so. But if you want to go out on the beaches and see the sky and enjoy your life, you can do that, because I'm not going to impede you from taking advantage of your First Amendment rights. But we cannot close this country. because so far we have lost what we know of 10 million American jobs. We have lost all of these things. And every year, folks, approximately 80,000 people die from the common flu, including 180 kids. So this also sets a bad precedence that we're going to do this every year whenever something bad happens. So we're going to go out there and buy. We're going to buy big. We're going to give you big write-offs to go out there and go to your restaurants and to go to your theaters. But if you feel that you're at risk, we're going to take care of you because you've served this country well, and we want to help you. But I'm not going to make you quarantine yourself, and you don't have to feel like you need to be quarantined. But if you want to die while looking at the blue sky of this great free country, you can do it. And I think something like that has to be said. I mean, and Joe, you can disagree with me, but don't you think eventually someone has to rip the Band-Aid off and have that conversation?
Yes, I completely agree with you. And what I'm afraid of is a normal politician isn't willing. Because what you're really saying, in the end of the day, is what Dr. Spock said on Star Trek. The good of the many outweighs the good of the few. And no politician is willing to say that. But a leader who will state the facts is willing to say that. And what I wish the administration would do a little bit more of, and I'm sure they're working on it, is the exact stats that you just started to quote. It's not just 30 million jobs or whatever the figure. It's also increase in alcoholism, increase in substance abuse, increase in suicide, and that we project, if this economy stays shut down for another 90 days, we project 2 million people dying or being addicted to drugs or family separation, divorce rate, whatever it is. We need to paint a story of the worst scenario. But you're right. I wish, he's actually been better than I've ever seen him leading these press conferences. Not quite as egotistical. I wish he would just sit down and have that frank conversation. But if I was him, you only can have it once. And I wouldn't have it right now because this is going to be the peak week. You wait about 3 to 4 weeks. That's the conversation to have when we turn the economy back on. And maybe you have certain cities we have to shut down because they did stupid things like have Mardi Gras. So that's my point of view anyway.
Now, let me cue up the audio real quick. This is CNN. They interviewed a University of California, Berkeley professor talking to him about the dangers of the coronavirus for kids. So let me cue this up here. It's from CNN.
As any parent knows, children get colds and viruses a lot. But mercifully, children are not getting terribly sick from this new coronavirus.
Children simply don't get very sick when they get this infection.
That's Dr. Arthur Reingold reporting that children don't get very sick when they get this. The Center for Disease Control from Italy is reporting that the vast majority of people who've succumbed to this disease had already very compromised immune systems. 99.2% of the deaths were people with greatly compromised immune systems. This is Fox News on the other side of the aisle reporting the same thing. Here we go.
What we're trying to figure out in this whole scenario here is how deadly the virus is. And so far, it is highly contagious, but not very deadly. We can agree on that based on the data.
All right. So there it is, folks. So we got the data out there for you. So now we know what the issue is. Now let's coach you through the process, okay? Paul, I'm pulling up the link here, and I want to get Joel's take on this. Whenever you go to I'll go to today's show notes, I'll put a link. Paul, you can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program with your local bank.
Yes.
And there's somebody out there, and I'll say me, who says, I don't want to freaking apply for this thing. So I'm just being real. For like Elephant in the Room, one of my businesses, because of how, we're actually viewed to be a non-essential company. So we might, I've been told by a few elected officials that I know who are pretty high up that we might not be able to actually come back and cut hair this year. This year. So, this year. I'm not talking about this month. I've talked to people that are very high up and said they might not let you cut hair again this year. And I'm going, this year? Yes, this year. So I was told by people I trust, who I voted for, who I've supported, hey, you better apply for this thing because it's first come, first serve. There's only $349 billion available. So let's just say I don't want to apply for it or I do want to apply for it. Either way, Paul, I have to apply for this thing. And when I apply for it, I have to apply for this Paycheck Protection Program with my local bank.
Right.
What should be my expectations from what you've heard right now? Does the bank call you right away and go, woo, you're funded in 10 minutes?
No. My banker has indicated this morning that they finally – see, what happened, Clay, is they came out with the application.
Oh, yeah.
And then the site kept crashing. Or that's, I guess, I'm sorry, from the EIDL. But the banks got an application, and we all filled it out. Matter of fact, I believe Wells Fargo had 1.1 million people fill it out.
Oh, that's a good number.
They came back the day before, I think it was almost midnight, before they were supposed to start accepting applications with the SBA, and said that their own application broke federal law. So everybody had to fill out a new application.
Oh, that sounds like a blasty blast,
Yeah,
Paul. That's
great.
a great time for everybody. Oh, yeah, that's a great time.
Yeah.
Application, sorry.
So everybody had to fill out a new application. Then everybody had this application, and the SBA, which was supposed to be accepting, have their portal set up for the banks to go through, it still wasn't up, and they were saying we're expecting it within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, baby.
So we've got the applications in. Now, my banker today has said that they've been able to upload some applications, but they don't know when they're going to get the okay to print loan documents.
Nothing like people not knowing when they're going to get money when they need money. Nothing like when 78% of Americans are check to check. Now, this is now check 3 that the average American has not received. Right now, CNN reported, this is CNN, and I always try to quote things that are antagonistic to myself politically, because that way you don't think I have like a big bias that I'm, because I don't want to cite Fox because I'm obviously a libertarian. So, but CNN is showing right now, the article's titled "Some Americans Could Wait 20 Weeks to Receive Checks." IRS tells House Democrats. Now, I happen to have gone to college with some people who work for the IRS, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, what that is, Clay,
20.
is if you if the IRS does not have your bank account, they're saying that it could be August before they mail out checks.
Oh.
The problem is, and I don't know if you know this or not, but ever since Obamacare came out, the insurance companies started sharing information with the IRS or vice versa. The IRS has had massive issues with identity theft. And they're not stealing from individuals. They're using individuals' information to file fraudulent tax returns. So the IRS is supposed to be, Treasury on the IRS's website is supposed to be opening a portal for people to go in and put their bank account information
And you're a
in
CPA saying this.
I'm a CPA
Okay,
saying this.
sure.
So they're going to open a portal for people to try to mitigate this August getting a check. My question is how on earth is the IRS going to mitigate identity theft?
Yeah.
But, people got to try. You got to get on there. But if they don't have your bank account, so if you owe the IRS money when you filed your tax return, you're generally not going to put your bank account on there.
Yep.
And so everybody who owed money is not going to get their stimulus check unless they figure out how to put that portal in there until
I would like to share even more negative news, and we'll try to end it with an upper. Joel, you live in Atlanta, am I correct? It's Atlanta?
That's where he's at right now.
Well, and Naples. I split my time between Naples and Atlanta, and I'd rather be in Naples right now, watching the Dolphins.
No kidding.
And Devin, I'm going to unmic you real quick here. Were you in the meeting today where young Andrew was explaining what was happening in his neighborhood? Were you there?
I was not there.
Oh, geez, I need a witness.
Come on.
Okay, well, Andrew, one of our employees, and one of my friends, Jonathan. So one of my friends who's in Denver and one of my friends who is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, both were robbed yesterday, and one of my clients was robbed, and there's door-to-door robberies going on right now during the middle of the day, because what happens is you have good-natured people who are check to check, and now they don't have a check 1 week, 2 week, 3, and they've heard they won't get a check for 20 more weeks. And so I'll call them compassionate robbers because nobody was shot. True story, though. 2 people that I know of have already been robbed today. And one of them was caught on camera, and the other one confronted the person, and they were like, okay, my bad. But it's happening.
Right.
It's happening.
What do? You got to feed your family.
There it is. So you're creating these weird situations. So what I want to do is I want to make sure listeners get this idea. 1, deal with the reality, all right? Step 2, apply for unemployment if you're an employee listening to this show, and if you are a business owner, apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. But I'm going to take it a step further. If you are stuck and you can't figure it out, email me right now, info@thrivetimeshow.com, info@thrivetimeshow.com. And I can say right now, we have personally helped over 200 people fill out the form who didn't know how to do it.
Right.
We've helped them round up 941 tax documents, payroll documents. And why would we do this? Because we give a crap. For the same reason I don't take advertisers on this show, because I want to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So if you feel stuck, just email us. We're not going to sit there and drip email you. I'm not going to sell your information. I just want to help you get this done. But also, if you're going through the funding process and you're getting stuck, also email us to info@thrivetimeshow.com. And I have a direct connection up to the highest levels of the land, and I've been sending your stories up to the highest levels of the land. And every time, I'm telling you, it's speeding up the process. It's changing the conversation. And we literally do have access to the highest levels of legislation there on the Hill. And get your story to us right now, info@thrivetimeshow.com. And we'll just share that, because I choose to believe that President Trump wants to get you funded right away. I choose to believe that the head of the SBA wants to get you funded right away. And what we've got to do is we've got to share that communication, get that information up there so we can send it to the right people. Paul Hood.
Well, all I was going to say, Clay, and Joel, let me know if you agree with this, because, adversity always creates opportunities. And, I think it is for, if we can get people, what we're trying to do with our clients is, like you said, is to shift gears, to try, look outside the box. What are you doing today that you can do, that can be done differently? And the thing that excites me is the people that lead this country, not the politicians, the small business person, the entrepreneur.
Yep.
They've dug themselves out of holes before, and we have the greatest people on the country or on the planet of looking outside those walls and trying to figure out. Just like you, Joel, when basically the government came in and said, basically, we're shutting you down. You've got to change completely. You didn't throw your hands up. You said, here, we're going to pivot. We're going to change directions. So, Joel, do you think, based on what your experience... Go ahead.
No. Finish your question.
I was just going to say, do you have that same excitement? I mean, I feel for people in the pain.
I do, because you're exactly right. We can get it's all up to us, right? It's our mindset. Every crisis presents incredible problems that are exhausting, depressing. We think we can't go on another minute. At the same time, they create incredible opportunities. Right now, I'm chairman of a nonprofit that we deliver all of our curriculum now online, directly into homes, no books. No, we are way ahead of everybody else. We have incredible opportunity in this, but we have to also manage the problems of being able to pay our employees through it. You have great entrepreneurs on your show, and they will figure out how to manage through this. And when we reopen, they can grab their great employees back. They can rebuild. I do think that this is not a super long-term thing. And when the economy opens back up, it's gonna go fast, because look at China. China, this weekend in their top tourist attraction, they had to close it down at 7:40 a.m. because they'd already reached their 20,000 person capacity. So I just think the American, when it's, 9/11 changed our lives. We didn't want to fly for a while. We didn't want to go in high buildings for a while.
Yeah.
This is going to change our lives too. We're just not sure how. But people need to integrate with entrepreneurialism and just being aggressive. Your listeners are going to get through this. They just have to get up every day.
Yep.
Be strong, be a leader, be honest, be truthful, be trustworthy, and we will get through this.
Absolutely. We also have to resist the push or the temptation to let the government take care of us, because we don't want to go down that road. We want to be self.
That's the big fallacy,
Yes.
though, isn't it? Because this $2 trillion package, who's paying for it?
That's
We're
exactly
all paying
right.
for
Exactly.
It. It's just, when are we paying for it? It's in this mindset of some in this country, including some of the millennials, but they think that the government's providing this. No, we're just borrowing from the future to pay our folks now. It's going to come out in higher taxes later, or bigger debt. There's no other way.
Yeah.
But at least the government's getting money, hopefully, to people, and that's what they need to do a better job of.
I have a confession real quick I'd like to make, Paul, to you on the show here. It's awkward. The only reason Joel agreed to be on the show is
you
because
want me to play the priest?
Well, the thing is that I may have told Joel that this might be the last day on the earth. His last day on the. Or this could be the end of the world as we know it.
And he chose to be here.
And I kind of guilted him on to being on today's show.
Oh,
Joel, I appreciate you for doing that. I didn't want to waste a good crisis. You know what I mean? So, Joel, thank you for being guilted into being on the show, man. I really appreciate you.
You know, I appreciate it, and just all your listeners, when it's a better time, but there's crisis experience in it. Love Works on Amazon, but I just appreciate what you're doing, Clay. I think your service to entrepreneurs is incredible, and keep it up. Keep up the great work. It's very important right now.
Hey, thank you, my friend, and sip on a nice, maybe alcohol-free Quarantini tonight from Georgia.
Okay, will do.
And now, by the power invested in me by this beautiful microphone, as I broadcast here from Camp Clark and Chicken Palace, I ask you, are you prepared to bring the boom? The big SeaWorld boom. I mean, remember the last time you went to SeaWorld as a kid, back when they actually had those killer whales? Folks, let's go back to that beautiful time, and let's bring that boom. Let's bring that big, overwhelming, optimistic momentum. Here we go, folks. Here we go. And 3, 2, 1, boom!
I've been trying to swim a lot, you know. You always hear swimming's the best exercise, but have you seen how fat whales are? And whales, they're like swimming all the time. It's not working, whales. Not working.
Now, I have no science to back this. I've just found that for me personally, after I have a rough day of work, one of the best ways to cathartically release the tension from a tough day is to go home and to make whale sounds. Now, you don't want to make whale sounds around the kids. You don't want to make whale sounds around your, significant other. People may, think you're a little bit weird. But if you're alone right now, just practice with me now. Let's try it. Here we go. How was your work day? How was your day, really? You've just discovered that you're not allowed to preach yet another church service because you might spread the coronavirus. If that's how you feel right now, you need to look into the mirror and say, or if you've just learned that you can't cut hair again this week because haircuts are deemed to be essential in your local area, just look into the mirror and say, if you've just lost a deal today, you were going to close a deal, the deal was going to be huge, but all of a sudden you can't close the deal because somebody doesn't want to close the deal until they know what's going to happen with the economy. Just look into your rearview mirror and say,